Welcome to LabMinutes.com and our lab video series in Cisco ACS. You can find a complete list of ACS video on our website by clicking on the link above and sign up for our newsletters to receive the latest video updates. In this video, we are going to show you how to manage a large object database where there is network devices or users using file operations in Cisco ACS. We will specifically look at file export, object add, update, and delete. Here's our lab setup. We have Cisco ACS version 5.4 running at the IPF.100 on VLAN 32. We have three network devices that's been added to our ACS server. The first one is switch 1 with the loopback IP of 0.1, the firewall 1 with the IP of 10.252, and our controller with the IP of .104. So first let me show you how we have our Cisco ACS currently set up. Now under the network devices, here we have the list of our three network devices we just explained on our diagram. And on the user database, we have a few users, but in this lab, we're specifically going to use our local one user to test our lock-in. And in this lab, as we go along and make changes to our object database, we're going to use our switch 1 to do a sanity check as far as lock-in and make sure everything is still good. And that's also verify that our file operation was successful. So first, let's do a quick test lock-in to itself, to a loopback IP. And you can see here we have a customized lock-in prompt. And we're going to use the local user here to log in, and password is Cisco. And you can see we can successfully log in at this time. Okay, we're going to come back and revisit and test login as we go along. So let's start playing around with our network devices. Although on our list of network devices here we only have 3, but you could imagine in your production environment you might be dealing with a couple hundreds, even thousands of network devices. But the idea remains the same. So the first thing we want to do is to export our list of objects. Here you can see you can find 3 records, which is our 3 network devices, and save files. So saved, I'm just going to put that on the desktop. And it's always a good idea before you start doing anything to export your objects. Not only that, the export file can be used to add or update these objects, but also it's a good idea to kind of take a backup copy before you make any changes, just in case that you need to kind of recover and add some of the objects back and restore to the original state in case something went wrong with your file operations. So here we have our export.zip. So we're just going to extract that, and we're going to leave the name as export. Close that out, and let's take a quick look at what it looks like. So here on the export spreadsheet, you will see the list of 3 network devices, and there's also a series of columns that responds to the attributes of particular objects. So things like the IP of since we're dealing with network devices here, so the IP of network devices, where there has TACX support. And you can see we also have the radius and TACX and some of the groups that the device are a member of. So now that we have a copy of our objects, the first type of file operation we are going to do is delete. So we're going to go ahead and delete firewall 1 and switch 1. So what we need to do is to click on file operations, and here you have 3 options: add, update, and delete. Since we're going to do delete, we'll click delete and then next. First you want to download a template and save the file, and we'll save it to the desktop. I'm just going to leave that up and running for now. Let's see if we can move that out of the way. Let's rename the file to delete. And let's open that. And the reason you want to use the template, because you can see right here, there's a certain format the file has to be in, and for delete, all you need is a key column, which corresponds to, in this case, the name of the network device that you want to delete. You can see that's all that requires for the ACS to determine what device or what object needs to be deleted. So we said we would like to delete firewall 1 and switch 1. So you can just go ahead and copy that from the export. You can see that's another reason why you want the export spreadsheet kind of sitting right there. You can just copy some of the information over. And now we have the firewall 1 and switch 1. You can save that. And now all we need to do is to go back and click next. And now we are going to import the file to tell ACS the object that we would like to delete. So let's find the one that's called delete, open. And we want to continue processing in case we run into any kind of errors. We'll click finish, and I'm just going to have to wait. And you can see here the ACS came back and report there are 2 objects that got processed, and there's no fail, which means both of the object must have been successfully removed from our database, and we can go back and verify. Let's just click on that. You can see our switch 1 and firewall 1 entries have now disappeared. Okay, so that's how you can do a bulk delete on the ACS. And now if we go back to our switch 1 and do a quick test login, you can see we no longer get our customized login problem, and that's because ACS is no longer aware of the switch. And now we just need to, all we can do is to use the local login account to get into the switch. Okay, and again, just to prove that, we can launch our monitoring and report, and we can take a look at our TACACS authentication log. And now you can see we have an error that said the packet has been received from an unknown network device, which is our switch 1 that's no longer exists on the database. Right? The next type of file operation we're going to do is to add, and we're going to add both of our switch 1 and firewall 1 back in. So the procedure is going to be very similar. So we'll click File Operations. Under Operation, we'll select Add, and Next, and we're going to download our add template. And we're going to rename that to add. And let's see if we can locate that. We'll open it. And if you compare the add template to the export, you can see the column is very similar. And in fact, when you do the add, you can also use the export file itself. Just delete all these rows and then use it as your add template. But here, since we already have the add template downloaded, we're just going to go ahead and use that. And what we're going to do, we're going to copy our firewall 1 and switch 1 entries right here, paste it back, and you can see all the column lines up pretty nicely, and that's because they have the exact same number of columns. But instead of adding it as is, we're going to change the name and put LM in front of our device name. And for the firewall, we're even going to, let's say, delete support for TACACS. So here, starting off column K, where it says support TACACS true or false, all the way through the column M that said legacy TACACS. So we're going to delete all that for, actually we want to do for firewall 1, so it should be the top row. There you go. So delete, and then let's save, and let's go ahead and finish our import file operation. So again, browse, click add, and add CSV. We'll click finish, let it progress, and looks like we have one fail. Looks like we're missing one mandatory attribute, which was the, let me see, right here. If you expand the column K, you'll see there's a require. So what we should have done is to put false in that. And let me delete switch 1 since it was successfully imported. Save, and let's try again with firewall 1. Click OK, close that, and let's try to add one more time. You can see this time we have successfully imported our firewall 1. So click OK, close that, and then go back to our network devices. You can see here we have both firewall 1 and switch 1 added back with slightly different name. And if you look under the firewall 1, you can see TACACS is unchecked. As opposed to, when you compare that to switch 1, you can see TACACS is checked with the secret key of Cisco as well. Okay, and again, let's do a quick test with the telnet on the switch. Again, we get our prompt back. So let's lock in with local 1 and Cisco, and you can see we can successfully lock in. And now if we go under the monitoring and report, we should expect to see a successful login entry with an updated device name of LM switch 1. Okay, so that's how you add multiple devices to your ACS server. Now, since we have slightly different sets of objects with the different names, let's go ahead and repeat our export to get a update list of our network devices. So save the file again and save. We're going to replace the existing, close that out. No need to close this. Don't make any change, and we'll delete the export spreadsheet. And then going to open that, and now we have an updated list of our network device. Okay, so the next type, or actually the last type of file operation we're going to do is updates. Let's say that now that we want to update our device name for firewall 1 and switch 1 to back to what it was originally. So what we do is to click on File Operations, select Updates. Next, we're going to download Update Template. Click OK. rename the file to update, and let's open up our update spreadsheet. And you can see here, if you look at the columns, our update spreadsheet ends at column Q, and when you compare that to the export.csv, it actually finishes at column P. That means we have an extra column on the update.csv, and that column is updated name string, which is also required. And this is when you want to rename your key column. In this case is our network device name, which is what we're going to do. But if you do not want, which we will try later in a little bit here, if you don't need to update your key column or the name, then you can just use the export spreadsheet and update the other columns. But since we're going to change the name, we need the update template. So we're going to copy our firewall 1 and switch 1. Oh, and one thing that I also want to make a quick note is this COA port, or changed authorization port for the radius. You can see when we added the device back in, if you look at the add template, we left that particular column or field blank, but somehow it got filled in with 0. So even if you go back to the ACS itself, so let me cancel out of that, under network device and expand out radius, you can see the COA port got changed to 0, or was configured as 0. You can see originally, if you compare that to the LM WLC that we did not touch, by default the COA port is 1700. So for some reason, when you add the device back in without specifying the port number, it gets by default reset to 0, which may or may not be something that you want. So just make a quick note of that. So now let's copy switch 1 and firewall 1 and put that under the template. But since the column is offset by 1, we're going to have to move that over just to line them up. And now for the updated name, firewall 1, instead of LM firewall 1, we said we want firewall 1. And same with switch 1. And for the description, let's put something like updated firewall. And then for the switch, let's put updated switch. And let's say within this process, we also want to fix our COA port number. We want to set it back to 1700. And if you remember on our firewall 1, we turned off our TACX support. So let's copy and paste that from a switch 1 and turn the TACX support back on. So support TACX equal to true with the secret of Cisco. All right, so that should be all that we need for our update templates. Let's save that and let's complete our file operation for updates. Type in updates, okay, and finish. All right, so looks like we got a successful import for both objects. So if we go back and refresh, we expect the name to change, and you can see that it did, as well as the description that got updated. And let's check our COA. So under TACX, you can see right here for some reason, although we specify the port 1700 under the COA column, it still shows up as 0. So that could be a bug as far as I can see. So just be aware of that you might need to come in and manually change that to the port that you need, for example 1700. You can see the same thing at the switch 1, COA was 0. And you can see here we clearly specified to be 1700. Okay, so that's basically how to use the update template to update your objects. I also wanted to show you how to use the, like I mentioned, export template or export files to update your object when you do not really need to update the name of your objects, which is the key column that how ACS identify the object. So let's go ahead and export the file one more time so we get the latest copy of our objects. Save file, overwrite. We're going to close that export that we have open. And then we're going to extract it again. Alright, so we get our updated list of device, and this time we're not going to change our device name, but instead we're just going to simply delete the description field. Okay, so gone, and we're not interested in making any changes to our WLC1 entry. And we can even try to force the COA again. just to see if it makes any difference. And we can save that, and then we can try to update. And this time we're going to choose our export.csv, which we just modify, and finish. You can see both of our records got updated successfully. And now if we refreshed our list of network device, you can see the description field has now disappeared. And just to see if we made any difference to the COA, apparently, even though again we update the COA port to 1700, that did not take effect on the network devices. Alright, so now let's go back to our switch 1 and do another test lock-in. And you can see we can still successfully lock into our switch 1. And if we look at the locking, here you can see our device name for switch 1 has changed back to SW1. Alright, so that's basically 2 ways to perform mass update. If you don't want to change the name, then using the same export.csv works just fine. Otherwise, you would need to use export template. Right? And also just keep in mind that the file operations that we have performed so far, although we use network devices as our example, that's actually applicable to pretty much any object that allows you to do the file operations. Another example would be users, list of users. You can see right here, there's also a button for file operations. So anything that has file operations, you can pretty much apply the same process. So before we finish up the lab, the last thing I want to do is to show you how to add multiple local users. So we're going to export the file for the users just to get that template. So save the file, okay, export, overwrite, and let's close that out. Again, delete. And you can see the file name is always the same for the export. And here we have the list of our 3 current users. And now let's say we want to add 5 more local accounts. That is part of local admin. So it will have ability to lock into our switch 1 here. So we're just going to copy and delete. Actually, we delete 2 more, too many roles. So let me delete the first 3 roles, and then we're just going to use the user, local 1 as our template. So what we can do, we can just drag it down, and we say we want to add 5 more, so that would be all the way through 7, since we have local 1 and 2 already. And then we're just going to copy all these. Alright, I'm going to delete the local 1 and 2, since those are existing accounts. And let's say we also want to have this VPN allow attribute checkbox checked as well. So we're going to make it all true on all of them. Again, drag it all down. And for password, we're going to make it consistent and use Cisco. And now we can save and go ahead with our import. So file operation. We must still have that open actually there. That's for the export, I think. So file operation, add. We use export.csv as a template. And then we're going to import it back now with 5 additional local users. And here we have a successful import for 5 records. And if we go back to our user page, we would expect to see local 3 through 7 shows up. And if you look under one of them, you can see here VPN access attribute that we had configured in the previous lab is set to true. And although there's no field for password, but if you're trying to log in, let's say using the local 3 account, you can see we can successfully log in with that account. And let's try one more, local 7. You can see that works as well. If you go to the authentication log, we should be seeing 2 successful log from local 3 and 7. So we know that user import or add using the export.csv was completed successfully. Okay, so that's basically how to use a file operations function on Cisco ACS to manipulate your object database. And just to reiterate, make sure you have a backup copy of your object database and basically do an export of the list of objects before you start making changes, just to make sure that you have a copy of that in case you accidentally delete or change something in a large scale and need to revert back. Then with that previous exported file, you'll be able to do so. Okay, so that wraps up our video on ACS 5.4 object export, add, updates, and delete. You can visit our website to view an extensive list of our lab videos and sign up to get access to additional lab contents. Thank you for watching LabMinutes.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video.